Closing arguments in the El Chapo trial are today. After months of arguments by the prosecution, El Chapo's defense lawyers called only just one witness before resting their case. El Chapo never spoke himself except to say he wouldn't be testifying.
He's facing a 17-count indictment for crimes including criminal enterprise and distribution. A verdict could come as early as next week. So for more on this, we are joined by attorney Paul Batista, who's been helping us along with this trial, which looks like it's coming to an end now. So we listened to weeks and weeks of testimony from the prosecution. The defense says they're going to call two people. They end up just calling one, and that's it.
That's it. That's the entire defense.
We rest.
But
We're done.
Hemingway said less is more, and sometimes that applies in trials too.
So what do we make of that? Is less more in this case? The burden of proof isn't on the prosecution anyway?
The burden of the proof is always on the prosecution, and that's what Judge Kogan will tell the jury. The burden always rests with the prosecution to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the jury will hear that. Maybe it'll go in one ear and out the other. They have heard 56 government witnesses. They have reason to doubt the credibility of maybe 90% of them, but they have heard a lot. It's been largely an attentive jury, even though there were a few sleepers on the jury and a few comments from the jury, such as if the underwear of El Chapo doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Right.
But,
well, that's original.
Yeah, and that is original. In the O.J. Simpson trial, not to go back to 7 generations ago, there was 9 months of trial, 9 months of prosecution, and Johnny Corcoran, the late great Johnny Corcoran, the lawyer, didn't put on one witness, put on no defense, and within 3 hours had an acquittal of O.J. Simpson on the murder charges. And on all charges, and O.J. walked out the front door. So you don't really know. It takes one juror who has something less than an absolute conviction in mind for the defendant to walk out the front door. But this is, I have to be realistic, an overwhelming case.
So you referenced the O.J. trial, 3 hours for the jury. How long do you expect the jury to deliberate here?
I think there'll be a while. I think, once you've heard 56 witnesses, and once you're dealing with a case of international implications, I think this jury could be out for 5, 6, or 7 days. There will always be an argumentative juror. There will always be a chance for a mistrial if not all of them agree. There will always be a chance of an acquittal. So I think we're in for an exciting 5 or 6 days of anticipating what the verdict will be.
So with 17 counts there, they can find him guilty on any number of combinations or whatever. What's sort of the high-low in terms of if he is found guilty, the sort of time he would be facing?
I just read the indictment again. Any conviction on any one of the 17 counts he faces, any one of them will result in a life imprisonment.
All right.
It doesn't need to be more than one. They are all life imprisonable offenses. So and in fact, if he's acquitted, he goes back to Mexico to serve out a life sentence. He may be able to get out, but...
So does this all sort of hinge on the closing arguments now because the defense had only one witness? Their closing argument presumably is going to be, listen, if you have one sort of shred of doubt, then you can't acquit this guy. Is that the sort of argument they're going to be pushing towards the...
Can I say something about closing arguments? The government has announced that it plans to take 8 hours to make a closing argument. Not a good idea. A closing argument should be either side, no more than 2 hours. It should be succinct and selective. So, in addition to which, I don't think the closing arguments really change the outcome. I think the jury is going to, in fact, the judge will say, whatever the lawyers have said really means nothing. It's the evidence that you've heard at trial, the credibility of the witnesses, the documents that you've seen. So a lot of wind at the end of the trial, but it might as well be a breeze blowing through the room.
Interesting.
Paul Batista, lovely talking to you.
Always great, Paul. Thank
Always
you.
great to see you.